Welcome to Lair of the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, my 10 all-time favorite heavy metal hard rock guitar players. Now, originally I was just going to do my top 5, but then there were some guys that didn't crack that top 5, and I was like, man, I gotta mention these players, and I thought, all right, well, let's just expand it to 10. Uh, Now, for me, what makes a good guitar player? One of the key things for me is that I have to like the music. If I don't like the band, I don't like the music, I don't care how good the guitar player is. I just won't listen to it. For instance, David Chastain. I think he's a really excellent guitar player, and I think some of the things he's done with his Chastain band and CJSS are good, but I just don't love the music, so I don't come back to it often enough. It just isn't good enough to just be a great guitar player. There has to be great music there also. So, and I like guys that sort of mix technique with some feel also. Maybe that bring something unique to the table. So, all right, with that in mind, let's get started. My number 10, Mr. Ingve J. Malmsteen. Now, when I first heard, I knew of Ingve and Alcatraz. I discovered him in Alcatraz, and I loved Alcatraz. I love Graham Bonnet. I think that almost anything Graham Bonnet gets involved in, he takes it up to another notch. In fact, some of the other bands I'm going to mention on this list, Graham was involved in them. So I loved Alcatraz. When I heard Ingve Malmsteen's Rising Force, his first solo album, I was just absolutely floored. I had never heard anybody play that clean, that fast, with that much of a classical influence. It was like there was no blues guitar playing anywhere on that record, and I still to this day, that's one of my favorite albums of all guitar albums of all time. So you might say, well, how did he land up so low on the list? Well, really after Odyssey, maybe. Marching Out, I loved Marching Out. I loved Trilogy. I loved when Joe Lynn Turner was in the band. But really after that, I lost it with Ingve. It all started to sound the same. All the solos started to just sound like he was just playing as fast as he could all the time. Whereas on the earlier stuff, I mean, he's certainly ripping it up and playing fast, but it sounded like there was a little bit more melody in there, a little bit more thought to it or something. And I think Ingve was just always better, when he was in a situation with a strong vocalist, like with Graham Bonnet and Alcatraz, and when Joe Lynn Turner was with him. And I just think after that, maybe, it just became less of a band and just about him, shredding all the time. So that's why Ingve kind of came up a little bit low on my list. Next, number 9. Uliroth, Uli John Roth. Now, I like Uli best with the Scorpions. I picked this because, it's got a pretty cool picture of him on it. I like Uli best with the Scorpions. Songs like Sails of Charon, in a lot of ways, laid the foundation for someone like Ingve. I think he has some of what Ingve has, which is that really fast technique, the cleanish, distorted sound, the breaking out of the blues type guitar playing. But for me, he lands up a little low on this list because I really only like what he did with the Scorpions. The stuff he did after it, although it's cool, man, his vocals just ruin it for me. Like this particular record, it's really hard for me to listen to this record because his vocals are just awful. And if he had a really great singer, and it's another situation like Ingve, where I think if he had a band with a great singer and some of the songwriting and direction was shared a little more equally, I think I would have liked it better. And really, after the Scorpions, he sort of did these different things, the Sky Guitar Orchestra, where he did the classical stuff, and it just doesn't work for me. So really, outside of the Scorpions, Uli just doesn't deliver for me in the songwriting department. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if I don't like the band, if I don't like the songs, it doesn't matter how good the guitar playing is. I'm not gonna, return to it. So Uli at number 9. Number 8, Mr. Jimmy Page. Couldn't find an album with his picture on it, so I went with Led Zeppelin 4. Jimmy Page gets, when his name comes up on lists, a lot of times he gets knocked for two things: that he's really sloppy live, which he can be. Although if you listen to As the West Was Won, the triple CD live set, man, he's smoking on that. Whereas if you listen to The Song Remains the Same, sometimes it's just so messy and sloppy that it's hard to listen to it. I'm thinking of like the song Rock and Roll. Although, like his guitar solo in Dazed Confused on that album, The Song Remains the Same is just fantastic. I wish more guitar players, when they did their guitar solos, thought of it the way Jimmy did, which was more of like a big composition. He's just not up there playing really fast. He's actually, it's like a big song. It's got ups and downs and moods and movements in it. Jimmy was an amazing producer, responsible for the sound of the Led Zeppelin records. He always had a great guitar sound. His playing on the albums is always great. And he did branch out into a lot of different things, like with the acoustic stuff, the bluesy stuff, the Middle Eastern style stuff. So that's why I love Jimmy Page, but unfortunately I couldn't rank him much higher on my list because I like some of these other guys a little bit more. All right, at number 7 is Brian May from Queen. I always loved Brian May because, to me, he's one of these guys that the minute you hear 2 seconds of the guitar and you know that it's Brian May. He has a very unique guitar sound, and he has a very unique way of approaching the guitar, an orchestral approach to the guitar, where he layers all these guitar parts. And think of Bohemian Rhapsody, or the way he uses his guitar to make different sounds, like Seaside Rendezvous off of A Night at the Opera, where it sounds like his guitar is a clarinet and it's like a Dixieland band, and so he does that all the time. And I wouldn't call him like a super technical guitar player, but man, his guitar solos, his tone, he has that really kind of compressed, sustained guitar tone, and immediately identifiable, always melodic. Again, going back to Bohemian Rhapsody, think of that guitar solo. I mean, just a composite. His guitar solos always sounded like they were compositions in and of themselves. It never sounded like he was just kind of, throwing his fingers around the neck. So always loved Brian May. Even you think of that thing when he comes in at the end of We Will Rock You. It's a total Brian May guitar sound. He's a little bit behind the beat and the bends that he does and everything. I mean, it's just fantastic. So Brian May at number 7 for me. Okay, number 6, Angus Young from AC/DC. AC/DC, the band that really got me into hard rock and heavy metal. A lot of people knock AC/DC like, there's just sort of this simple 3-chord band, which, there's some truth to that. But Angus is one of these guys, and the band in general, is one of these bands that everybody knocks them. But hey, there aren't a lot of bands that sound like AC/DC. And for as popular as they are, you would think that a lot of people would copy them. But I think the reason why you don't hear a lot of bands that sound like AC/DC is because their sound is all in the feel. Angus and Malcolm, the way they played together, their guitar riffs are always kind of like syncopated. Think of a song like "What Do You Do for Money, Honey?" Real offbeat, really tight. And this is way before Pro Tools and all that. And Angus, to me, as a guitar soloist, always you recognize his style and his sound, right away. It sort of fits his manic schoolboy image thing. It's always kind of aggressive, but he's a guy that can just ride on one note, you know, like on High Voltage, a song Live Wire. You know, he just has a rhythmic feel to his soloing. And think of like the guitar solo in You Shook Me All Night Long. I mean, that it's just absolutely perfect for the song, you know, and I never really feel like Angus is just doing things for, you know, the sake of technique, even though he's pretty much a one scale, you know, pentatonic major, pentatonic minor guitar player. You know, he really gets a lot out of that. And again, you hear one note and his vibrato, the way he plays just one note, and you know that it's Angus. So for me, you know, that's an accomplishment, you know, in itself. Okay, number 5, the man, the riffs, the legend, Tony Iommi. Yeah. Now, Iommi makes this list for me, well, because I love Black Sabbath. And I like Tony's soloing, but I actually like, first of all, I think he's the king of the heavy metal riff. You know, you go through every Sabbath album, you know, it's just riffs to die for. And this man's been doing it since 1970. He always delivers the goods when it comes to riffs. So he is, for me, hands down, the king of the heavy metal, heavy riff. The one thing I don't like about Tony is I don't like when he's soloing and he starts to get real kind of frantic and it gets a little sloppy. Sometimes it works, you know. I'm thinking of like at the end of Over and Over off of Mob Rules. He's just sort of going crazy and he goes really high. I always liked him best when his solos were almost like part of the song. Think of the guitar solo in War Pigs, you know, down, 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 down. That's a riff in and of itself, you know, and the crowd sings along with it. So to me, that's always where he's at his best for me, you know, or like Snowblind, where at the end of the song he's just doing these like bends that sort of go along with the song. And you know, and another thing about Tony Iommi that doesn't get talked about a lot is I always loved the acoustic guitar stuff that he did, like Embryo and Orchid and Laguna Sunrise and Fluff. The acoustic guitar solo at the end of Symptom of the Universe. So, you know, he has a lot of different sides to his playing, and I do love when he goes off into like a more jazzy thing, because I know that that's a big influence on him, Django Reinhardt. And so like in Planet Caravan, for instance, you know, where he's just getting really jazzy. If you listen to the Live at Last record, you know, they really stretch out in Wicked World, and he gets real jazzy in that, you know, and that's what I really love Iommi. But, you know, he ranks up high on the list, you know, riffs alone. And when he does have those melodic solos, they're just, you know, they're so catchy. Okay, number 4 for me, Mr. Michael Shanker. Yeah, from UFO and the Michael Shanker group. I took this album because it's got a pretty cool picture of Michael on it, although my favorite playing from Michael is from the UFO era, especially the Strangers in the Night album. I mean, Rock Bottom, that live version of Rock Bottom, could be one of the greatest guitar solos of all time, you know. And what I love about Michael is he's so melodic, and his phrasing and his melodicism, it never sounds like he's just throwing notes out there. You know, it really sounds like he's hearing every note that he plays and that every note means something. His guitar sound is killer. His rhythm sound and his lead sound, you know, it always sounds like he has his foot, the wah-wah pedal is like slightly cocked, you know, to give it that sort of slightly nasally, mid-rangey sound. Sustain, but again, it's his melodicism, the way you can listen to different solos, and he just you know, bring something different to the table, you know. And he's not like a guy that plays a million different scales or something, you know. He's, you know, in the sense of he's not doing anything crazy technique wise or crazy scale wise, but it's just his melodicism, uh, his phrasing, how he approaches the songs that is really just awesome. And I love him. And I really love the first, so many Michael Shanker group albums. I think after that, it's really hit or miss for a while for him. I love his Temple of Rock stuff that he's done recently. I think he's had sort of a renaissance, a resurgence in the last, maybe 5 to 10 years. So, Michael Shanker. Number 3, Mr. Jimi Hendrix. You got to have Jimi Hendrix on this list, right? When you're talking about hard rock and heavy metal guitar, I certainly wouldn't consider him heavy metal. Maybe not even hard rock, but his influence is just absolutely undeniable. Without Jimi Hendrix, we wouldn't have anybody else who's on my list here. The guitar solo in Machine Gun from the live Band of Gypsies records is maybe one of my favorite guitar solos of all time. It has maybe one of my favorite guitar notes of all time, where when he first starts the solo, he bends up to this high note and he just hangs on to it for what seems like forever, and it's just screaming sustain. And I mean, what can you say about Jimi Hendrix? He was the first guy to change the way the guitar was played. I mean, really before Hendrix, you had maybe Eric Clapton, Pete Townsend, and even though Eric Clapton, was getting into the sort of the distorted Marshall Stack style guitar sound, Hendrix just came in and it went from Clapton to Hendrix just took it onto another planet. The leap was just amazing. And, what I love about Jimmy is his songs, his composition, his rhythm playing, something that doesn't get always talked about, but you think about like on this album, Wait Until Tomorrow, or, Wind Cries Mary off the first record. Even though he's a blues guitar player, it never sounds like he's regurgitating blues licks, if that makes any sense. A lot of times when I hear Eric Clapton, I just hear what sounds to me like stock blues licks. Whereas Hendrix, it just sounds fresh. And even though Hendrix is a blues-influenced guitar player, there's not a lot of just straight-ahead blues stuff on his albums. Maybe Red House, Voodoo Child, if you want to consider that like a one-chord, blues thing. But he's not like, for instance, I hear people compare Stevie Ray Vaughan to Jimi Hendrix, and I just don't find Stevie Ray Vaughan as interesting because I love blues guitar playing, but hearing the same chord progression over and over to me is just not interesting. And I think Hendrix just takes it way, way beyond. And he's another guy. He's another guy that, like Michael Schenker, where it never sounds like he's just playing notes. It's like he's hearing and feeling everything that he's playing. And I can listen to some. It blows my mind because I'll listen to some live bootleg or live recording of Hendrix and hear him play some song that I've heard him play a million times before, and then there'll be some guitar lick or something that he does on the guitar. I'm just like, whoa, I've never heard him play something like that before. He always comes at it, from a unique angle, and it's just amazing about him. His catalog got a little messy, in the later years, and I don't really like the fact that they're just constantly releasing live Hendrix stuff. Sometimes the live Hendrix stuff can be a little messy, his guitar can be out of tune, the band can be a little frantic or a little bit off, but when the band's on, like Hendrix in the West, which is one of, a live album that was released not too long after he died, his playing is just, mind-blowing and out of this world. The song Voodoo Child, Slight Return from Electric Ladyland, may be one of the greatest guitar sounds put onto tape, in my opinion. Just absolutely amazing. So, Jimi Hendrix at number 3. Number 2 for me, Mr. Randy Rhodes. Now, unfortunately, Randy left us way, way, way too soon. This is actually a bootleg album that's got some Quiet Riot and some live Ozzy stuff on it. Just absolutely tragic that Randy left us so soon. Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, two of my favorite metal albums of all time. The guitar playing on those albums is just, out of this world. The fade out solo on Tonight, he sends shivers up my spine. What he does at the end of Revelation, Mother Earth, what he brought with infusing some classical sound, but still having that bluesy element in his playing. One can only imagine, if he had gone on, what he would have done. So I love Randy. Even if you listen to, I wouldn't recommend he released 2 albums with Quiet Riot that were only released in Japan. I wouldn't recommend, I would recommend you listen to those just for historical sake. But really, to hear him with Quiet Riot, you got to go on YouTube and look up some of their live shows, because he was a completely different guitar player live with Quiet Riot than he was on those records. And he just rips. The guitar fills, the big guitar sound. You can hear, Quiet Riot had a song called, I can't remember what it's called, that featured his guitar solo in it, Laughing Gas. And you'll hear a lot of things in his live guitar solo with Quiet Riot that landed up being Ozzy riffs. So, don't dismiss the Quiet Riot era, but the 2 Ozzy albums, just absolutely incredible. He's another guy that every note sounds like he means it. He had the technique, yet he had the feel, whereas Ingva has the technique, but a lot of times it lacks the feel for me. But Randy had the technique, he had the feel. Absolutely tragic that he's not here anymore. It just, I remember the day he died, and it just absolutely broke my heart, because he was my guitar hero. Okay, my number 1 favorite heavy metal hard rock guitar player of all time, Mr. Richie Blackmore from Deep Purple and from Rainbow. Richie is number 1 for me because for a lot of reasons. I love Rainbow, I love Deep Purple. Richie's a guy that can play the blues and sound very convincing. He can branch off into more Middle Eastern, exotic sounding scales and stuff, and sounding great. He's got tons of technique, yet he's always melodic. He's always tasteful. I love the fact that he branches out, away from just typical blues type playing. His sound is immediately recognizable. As soon as you hear him, before I made this video, I was watching a YouTube video of Deep Purple during the Perfect Strangers era live, and they did Child in Time, and my jaw was just on the floor. Again, I've heard that song a million times, and he was doing things in it that I never heard him do before, and his technique is just off the charts. I put his technique on the level of Yngwie Malmsteen. The difference is that he knows when to hold them, when to hold back, and he knows when to explode, which makes it, to me, all the more dynamic. The fact that he's not just burning all the time, that he knows when to hold back. He can play. Listen to, there's a live in Germany pro shot video with Ronnie James Dio from the right before Long Live Rock and Roll came out. And you can hear where he will drop down into a whisper quiet, clean guitar, playing these classical melodies. He can crank it up really loud, like on Kill the King, where he's playing sort of the neoclassical thing. He can play gentle and melodic, like on Rainbow Eyes. He knows when to lay out, like when you listen to Deep Purple, when John Lord is playing, he drops back. Not many guitar players do that, they gotta be front and center. Richie can drop back and at times even drop out, to let John Lord or whoever else was soloing on the keyboards. He's always tasteful. His rhythm playing doesn't get talked about enough. For me, it's super interesting. He's just not like a power chord type guy. In fact, a lot of times he's not even playing chords. He's playing these lines, that walk up and down and move around. Think of like Man on the Silver Mountain, and so he's an interesting guitar player. He has a very unique tone. I even personally like what he does with Blackmore's Night. I know a lot of metalheads and hard rockers, laugh and scorn him and make fun of him for Blackmore's Night. But in my opinion, listen to some of that stuff and listen to the guitar playing in that. I mean, it is like classical level. He plays a lot of it on acoustic guitar, so he's not hiding behind a wall of distortion. Uh, if Richie wanted to take the easy way out, he would have just hung around in Deep Purple and kept making a paycheck. But he's doing what he loves, and yeah, would I rather have him doing classic Rainbow type stuff? Yeah, of course. But to me, he's always pursuing things as a musician. And if you listen to Richie as he evolves, he evolved as a player. His playing on Perfect Strangers to me is more advanced than it was on Deep Purple and Rock. And he's just always doing interesting things. And so that's why for me, the guy that lands at number one for me is Mr. Richie Blackmore. So let me know what you think of my list. Let me know some guitar players who you really like, maybe your top 10 list. Again, this is just mine. A lot of these are the guitar players that hit me when I was younger and made an impact on me. I'm sure there's guys that I missed on the list that if I made a top 15 or top 20 would have been on. But okay, so hit like and subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, all that stuff. So until we see you next time, remember to stay heavy and stay metal.